5.
Curry hits a three.
4.
Houston with a drive. Deep left field.
3.
Patrick hit by Watt. Sack number 10.
2.
Messi with a record-breaking goal.
1.
Welcome to BSS Sports. Now, here are your hosts, Steve and Trevor.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of BSS Sports. My name is Steve Schill with the ever-lovely Trevor Struthers, and to start today's show, we have an argument. He is a fan of curling. I am a fan of soccer, and obviously in North America, we kind of look at the MLS as, you know, kind of the main soccer league that we look at. Yes, there's the EPL, but from like broadcasting standpoints and whatnot, MLS is where we go to. Now, Trevor seems to think that curling is more important in Canada than soccer.
I didn't say soccer specifically, I said the MLS.
Okay, so why do you think that curling is more important than the MLS?
Well, first off, you kind of included it in your own like opening there, a little bit of my argument, the fact that like it's not the top league, the best talent for that sport isn't in the MLS. Meanwhile, we produce the best curlers. I mean, nobody annually will tell you that they watch curling, the majority of people anyway, but what will happen is that a lot of people will watch curling around Olympic time. Why? Because we always seem to produce the best curlers, and we always have a shot. I mean, Jennifer Jones, obviously, in that last Olympics really proved that. And, I mean, Sweden's also another hotbed for curling and producing great curlers. But, I mean, Canada is the main hotbed of everything for curling. And, I mean, obviously with all the ice that we have, but we have some great curlers. And, I mean, Rachel Homan is one that I can't help but continue to watch. And she's won another national championship. She's got 3. She's 27 years old. That's incredible. And you have guys like Kevin Martin is like an Olympic legend, I would say, in this country for what he's done. And definitely, you know, one of the bigger curling games. And Glenn Howard in Ontario is big for curling. But I mean, for this argument in general, like the MLS versus curling, I think you have to give the edge to curling just solely because the MLS, you don't have the best players going in MLS. It's like a farm league that's not attached to anything.
Well, I think the thing with curling is there's not many leagues with curling. It's just the one. There isn't like enough talent to be pulled around from the different places. But with that being said, I think as well the majority of Canadians, at least, because we're looking at Canada here, grow up playing soccer. So I feel from that standpoint, you know, that they know how the game works. Because me, I tried curling once. I didn't understand it. It hurt. It was not pleasant. And so it was one of those things where I don't really understand it. And I mean, I guess you could say that curling is kind of like cricket, I guess, is people know what it is, but they don't exactly know how it works all the time.
Well, the thing with curling, and I mean, you brought up soccer and how people play it from a young age, and I mean, that is true. Why? Because soccer is one of the easiest sports to play. All you got to remember is, unless you're a goalkeeper, don't pick it up with your hands, basically, and you can play some form of a game of soccer. Whereas curling is a lot more difficult. I've never thrown a stone before in curling, but I mean, just like trying to like make shots and angles and stuff like that, and how much power and how much, you know, curl and they put into the stone when you let it go, stuff like that, you know, sweeping. I imagine it can be pretty difficult to get the hang of, and I actually kind of relate curling in a way to golf, of how it's one of those sports. First off, not a lot of people seem to love to watch it, especially out of the millennial crowd, but it's one of those sports where it seems like as well, until you get the hang of it, it's really frustrating to play as well. But I mean, you mentioned how there's no like top curling leagues. Well, I mean, what you do have is you have your events, and you know when they are. I mean, the Briar's going on right now. We just finished up with the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. There's our national men's championship and our national women's championship. You have your Grand Slam events that happen throughout the year. So you have your events that are all spaced out, and you know when to tune in. And you have your Olympic trials, and obviously when the Olympics roll around, you know that curling is a part of the Winter Olympics, and that's going to be taking place in the host country. And so you have your little like events throughout the year that are sprinkled in. They're always around the same time. You know, you have your World Championships after Nationals, and it's a great place. First off, I mean, you want to talk about soccer. Sure, our soccer for the women's, I mean, you want to talk about like international play for soccer. The women's team's the only good one. I mean, the men's team sucks really bad. Whenever the men or women for curling go to nationals, they're always a threat to win the gold and definitely medal. And if you don't get into curling, but you want to root for your country in a sport that's not ice hockey, but it's played on ice, I feel like you should give curling a shot. And I mean, curling's not for everyone. I mean, that goes without saying. I watch golf as well. Watching golf's not for everyone. That's a joke that a lot of people will make. Watching golf, it's easy to fall asleep to, stuff like that. Curling can be as well, I suppose. But I mean, I love baseball, and a lot of people won't get into baseball for the strategy of it. I love the strategy of curling, even though I don't quite understand it. The more I watch curling, the more I become a fan of it because I'm learning more about strategy, stuff like that. And personally, even, I mean, the Scotties Tournament of Hearts came to Kingston like just a few years ago, and I had a shot there to actually go watch the national championship for the women live. And I mean, that was intriguing to watch. I was there for the final. I was there for one of the final draws that had all 4 of the surfaces being used. And there's always something going on when you're there live at the event.
Okay, fair enough. I think with soccer, the final point I'm going to say is the community that gets around it, and when you go to games and everybody's hooping and hollering and singing out throughout the whole song, I think from that standpoint, that it's a very good community thing.
Well, to a degree, though, it's the same with curling, because you have your diehard curling fans. And I
have never seen a hardcore cheering section going, da-da-da, TFC.
Not the whole time.
Let's go curling. Let's go curling.
They have to focus when they throw the stone, so it's like they're not going to make that noise all the time. But you have your hardcore devoted fans. There's this one guy that always goes to events, has a big white beard, and always like dyes his beard certain colors and tries to get the logos in there and stuff like that, which is incredible. They have their diehard fan base, and they have their fan base that root, cheer, go to a bunch of events, meet these people. And so they have that diehard fan base. It's just not as big as soccer. And why is that? Because soccer is the biggest global sport. But if we're talking specifically about the MLS is like a third-tier league.
What a fun argument. What a fun argument.
We actually got some passion.
So, not to completely change gears here, but that's what we're doing. Going to the NHL, the trade deadline was not as eventful as some years. Another point, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, they're officially a team.
Yeah.
Don't really have anything going on with them for the point being.
They're very limited in what they can do.
Yeah, so we'll see how well that goes with the league. But with that being said, PK Subban made his return to Montreal. And Trevor, did you see the pure emotion from Monsieur PK?
I didn't see the game when it actually happened, so I didn't see it as it happened. But, I mean, obviously clips about it were all over the internet after the fact. And, yeah, you saw them. I saw them, and I'm sure everybody else saw them. And to see the emotion that he shared, I mean, it gives you a sense of, like, his feelings toward Montreal. There are a lot of people that don't like PK Subban, the flashiness that comes with PK. There's some people that aren't intrigued by that. But what PK does, and I mean, he's not like, I mean, that's not fake emotion coming out of PK. That's real emotion in the moment there. And I mean, it's crazy to think about, and I can imagine what was going through his mind at the time. Because everybody's on their feet. There's tons of noise being made. I mean, those are one of the biggest ovations you'll get anywhere. Definitely in the sport of the NHL and in hockey, to like get an ovation for that long, that big of a deal. I mean, the emotion, and obviously PK is a big guy in this community, or he was when he played here. But I mean, obviously the memories, they last forever, and obviously PK is well renowned around the Belleville area, and I mean, people knew it then when he was here around the community, and people in Montreal know it and appreciate it, what he was able to do for that community, and I'm sure he's doing the same stuff down in Nashville now.
And one of the things that was interesting was in an interview PK did, Nashville basically told him, you're you, do whatever. We don't want you to change. Focus on, you. And to an extent, it was kind of the same with Dion Phaneuf going to Ottawa. Everybody was like, oh, Dion's going to be awful because he's awful with Toronto. And everybody cites the fact that they gave him the C and told him he was in charge. Now, being your general spectator, when you see the C, you don't really think that means a whole lot. Okay, sure, they can talk to the refs. Sure, they're the ones that usually sell the most jerseys for whatever reason, right? And they're the, captain of the team. But I feel that the teams, there actually is a difference with the captain. You are the one that everybody kind of looks to. If you think of your boss at work, they're the ones you look to. It's your teacher. You always kind of look up to them, and if they're not doing well, then you get the reflection. And that seems to what happened in Toronto with Dion. He wasn't able to beat up.
That's the grade A example. I mean, you just see how and the Leafs, let's face it, they were awful when he was the captain throughout that stretch. I mean, now they seem to be getting better now that they have some actual direction. But in while there, while Phaneuf was captain, they were a horrible hockey team struggling to make the playoffs. They would just miss the playoffs, so they wouldn't get a great draft pick, stuff like that. And so who's got to wear it? It's out of the players. They're always looking to the captain. And I mean, there was the one instance of that one game. I can't remember the specific day or who it was against, but Dion Phaneuf, the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, didn't talk to the media the next day. What did he end up doing? Well, he ended up having to go on all the radio shows the next day, apologizing, wearing it, kind of saying, why wasn't he talking to the media? All because he wouldn't talk to the media after one regular season game. Imagine being that guy. But why was that the case? Because he plays in the media hotbed, the hockey hotbed of Toronto with the Maple Leafs, and that's something that, being the captain of the Maple Leafs, being a captain of an NHL team would be cool. I feel like being a captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, even if you are a Leafs fan, and I'm not, but even if you are a Leafs fan, I feel like that's, that's a little bit too much to try to handle.
Is Toronto the most toxic market in the NHL for that?
I think it has to be. I don't think we've seen cases as bad in Montreal. Montreal, they obviously have that diehard fan base in very similar ways. And maybe it's because they've seen more success more recently than the Leafs have. But you don't see so much negative light on the players and stuff like that in Montreal. In fact, you probably see more on the coaches and the general manager, and that's maybe part of the reason why Michel Therrien was fired. But in Toronto, the players obviously always wear the brunt of it, and maybe Morgan Rielly would make the perfect captain for the Maple Leafs because he does kind of seem like more of an emotionalist guy, or maybe emotionalist is the wrong word because he does seem to have emotion, but he's very reserved, and he seems like he'd say the right kind of thing, and he's not gonna go out and say the wrong thing. So I feel like he's similar to Phaneuf too in many ways too. Phaneuf was very prim and proper like that. PK Subban being a captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, that would be interesting because he's more of an outgoing personality, and he does a lot of great stuff in the community and all that, but he's more of an outgoing personality and will be more likely to give the media something to kind of chew on in the Toronto market.
So the last thing we want to talk about today is the Josh Donaldson trade. Trevor, if you were to grade the trade from a Blue Jay standpoint, which was straight up Brett Lawrie for Josh Donaldson, what grade would you give it?
Well, there were a few more pieces in that trade too, and one thing that we got to hold out for is Franklin Barreto as well, is a prospect that went to Oakland, a shortstop prospect that could end up having a very good major league career. The thing though, right now, before we know what Franklin Barreto is going to be, and even a guy like Sean Nolan potentially as well, who's seen some time in the majors with the Athletics. But, going off of what we've seen so far, obviously it's got to be an A+ for the Blue Jays. I was all over it at the time, and I'm sure you're well documented. We did that MLB preview, and you were very high on Russ Martin. I was very high on Josh Donaldson going into that season, and what happened? Josh Donaldson won the MVP. Just going to throw that out there. But,
Trevor.
Josh Donaldson won an MVP award. They've been to back-to-back ALCSs. Sure, it hasn't been the World Series, but it's been a fun experience either way, a better experience than if you missed the playoffs. So far, this trade is definitely a win for the Blue Jays. And even if Franklin Barreto ends up being a very good major league shortstop, will he ever win an MVP? Because that's something Josh Donaldson did as a Blue Jay, only the second time in franchise history, and that's something that can't be. Imagine if that trade wasn't done, and obviously we wouldn't know how good Donaldson would be as a Blue Jay, but he's been phenomenal as a Blue Jay. And even if he ended up walking at the end of his contract, we've still had the last couple of years of great Josh Donaldson baseball to see and reflect on for essentially the rest of our Blue Jay fandom lives.
So with that being said, there's now talks that Brett Lawrie is coming back to the Blue Jays. Talks, at least that the Blue Jays are interested in acquiring him. But as we know, Brett Lawrie has some injury issues. When he went to Oakland, he didn't perform as expected, or kind of as expected. His stats weren't bad. He had 16 home runs and 60 RBIs. In 100-some-odd games, but they decided, hey, we're going to ship you off to the White Sox. They got some pictures from the minor league in return. But if you're the Blue Jays, sure, Brett Lawrie sells jerseys, but you already have Devin Travis, who's kind of injury-prone on your infield. Is it worth the risk to bring him back for some sales and to play, potentially an entire season, but he'd be more of a backup role? At least that's the way that I'm getting the feel of.
Obviously, I don't expect the Blue Jays to do much with Brett Lawrie in terms of, obviously they'd show some interest to a degree because he has been a Blue Jay before. He's from this country, stuff like that. He's very young. He's 23. I don't call him a bad Major League Baseball player. I call him a young Major League Baseball player. Why? because he got to the bigs pretty quickly, and a lot of his growing through the game has happened in the big leagues, and that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing him grow. We're seeing him adjust. It happens all the time in baseball. Baseball's a game you can never master. With that being said, I mean, I don't see him coming to Toronto. I don't call Devin Travis injury prone because he's only been around for a couple of years. Sure, he's been let's try that again. He's been injured for those couple of years at times, but I mean, it's been a couple year sample. I mean, sure, if this keeps happening until the end of his Blue Jays run, say in like 5 years, then absolutely he was injury prone. But I'll give Devin Travis the benefit of the doubt that he was through a bit of a rough patch there. And yeah, I don't see the Blue Jays really approaching Brett Lawrie, just because I would only do it if it was like a minor league basis.
That's it for this edition of BSS Sports. Make sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at BSS Sports. Archiving all of our works on YouTube at BSS Productions. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next Monday. You're listening to Alternative Radio